Good morning. Warm regards from the Holy Land. And may they have a complete Yeshua and Tzachon without any more
Amen.
casualties and losses. And may our learning all go in that merit and that schus.
Amen.
If some of you probably saw that I spoke for the soldiers, the first night I came to Eretz Yisrael was a week ago, Wednesday night. So I was down in a place called Sa'alim. It's an IDF military base. It's the closest one to Gaza. That's where they train. There's a place called Little Gaza there, a replica of the whole Gaza they built there. So they trained there in the tunnels and so on. So I had a very, how should I say, harrowing tour, seeing all of that. And then I spoke for the soldiers. We posted it all, so I don't have to repeat what I said, but I'm just pointing it out. That was the first place I went to when I arrived. But otherwise, I will say Eretz Yisrael is the miracles that life goes on as if there's no war. You know, wherever you are, Yerushalayim, Tel Aviv, different places I've been to, Hebron, people, you know, that they're able to live life normally, even though just a few miles away there's what's going on, is itself quite a miracle. So much more to say. I just did not want to not mention. I didn't want to be amiss and not mention this trip I had, because our hearts and souls are with our brothers and sisters there. As I said, we're learning their schus, and I'd love to be in Eretz Yisrael, but it's also good to be back, and we'll bring the spirit of Eretz HaKodesh to our learning here in New York, in California, in Eretz Yisrael, wherever you may be, wherever anyone's listening to this class now and later in the recording. Okay, so with that, let's go right into it and try to be mamshech some elokus into this world that sorely needs it. So, where are we? We are on page 400. I believe we stopped at 428. I'm almost sure that's what we're up to. But no, sorry, 426. 426. And correct me if I'm wrong about that. Maybe. No, again, a mistake. 424. Okay. I thought that we were ahead of where we actually are. 424. That's the right place. I believe we ended the paragraph, the middle paragraph, on page 424. That's the correct number. So I corrected myself. The pages can be found at iambase.com if you want to follow along. Let me sum up, being that we were not learning. Actually, I was not part of the class for the last week. Let's sum up what we've been learning. So the Maimer in general is the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer on page 424, which is based on the Alter Rebbe's Maimer in Torah Chanukah Maimer, Mi Kashem Elokeinu, Hamagbi L'Sheves, Hamashpili Lides B'Shamayim Ba'aretz. And this is the foundational text of a big part. I'm going to have to pause a moment because I see the hard drive is full. So the recording stopped. So I'm going to leave. Stay on. I'm just going to take me a minute to delete a few files to make room. Just give me a second. Sorry about that. What do I do? Okay. I'm here in case you're wondering. I'll be back in a moment, another moment. Okay, I'm back. Can you see and hear me?
Yes.
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 Sorry about that. Start the recording again. So we're going to have to cut out that piece. But let's say, so back to where we were. I was beginning to sum up what we've learned. We're up to page 424, which is the Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe based on the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, which in turn is the foundational text, a big part of the end of Hemshech Hayim Beis. And the Maimer begins, Mi'ek Hashem Elokeinu Makbil L'Sheves HaMashpil L'Yiresh B'Shamayim V'Aretz. The main thrust of the Maimer, as we've learned and reviewed a number of times, is an analysis of the psukim, Ner Hashem Nishmas Odam, that the soul of a human being is the flame of God, candle of God, and Ner Mitzvah V'Torah that the mitzvah is compared to a candle and Torah to light. And the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, in brief, the level of Chachma, the Mittler Rebbe elaborated on all these different aspects, what a candle is made up of the three aspects of a wick, the oil that is transformed into fuel that feeds the fire. In this case, the Nefesh Habam is being the fuel that is transformed from the oil of the intelligence of the animal soul, being transformed by the wick, which is the divine soul, into a fiery passion and love for God. The neshama is given resources to achieve this, in addition to its own resource. The neshama itself being like a fire, a candle, it also has the mitzvahs and Torah. And we learned at length what a mitzvah is, how a mitzvah takes the physical reality, the physical world. Mitzvahs are all manifest in physicality, and turn them into kelim, to be a rotzen l'Hashem, the rotzen Hashem, which is what a mitzvah is, and a Torah is light, in the fullest sense of the word. That's not subject to tzimtzum. The closest picture we get of the divine itself in its undiluted form, Ani Hashem Le'Shanisi, that does not shift or change, is immutable as it comes down below. So you have the neshama armed with mitzvahs, armed with Torah, and you have the ability to transform this world into a dira b'tachtenim, in the fullest sense of the word, with many more details, obviously, which I'm not reviewing right now, but that was the gist of it. After explaining that, he went back and said, this is also connected to Chanukah, which also illuminates the darkness and reaches even a higher level of Elokus that comes from a place that's beyond darkness and light. And then on page 422, till where we are now, he began to go back to the original Dibra Maschel, the actual name of this Maimer. What is the meaning of Mika Hashem Elokeinu HaMakbil L'Sheves HaMashpil L'Yiresh? Explaining it in the same context, that when you talk about Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, which is the Hisbonenus of the neshama in the two levels of Yechud Elah, Yechud Tata, as we learned, the two Yechudim, Das Elyon and Das Tachten. So that is alluded to in this verse. Hamashpili, he said, Hamashpili L'Yiresh is the first. Hamakbil L'Sheves is the first level of Das Elyon, because it's going up Magbia, elevated all the way up to the core. L'Sheves, like he explained, that becomes his resting place. That is what it's a keli for Elokus in its purest, highest form. Atzmi, which higher completely from Seder Shtalshlus, and Hamashpili L'Yiresh is Mashpala, is drawing down Elokus in a way that it relates to existence. Das Tachten and Yechud Tata. That's in brief what we learned on pages 422, 423, and 424. But then he added, the last thing we learned was the paragraph on 424, that in truth, Kael Deis Havaya, both days by Atzmus is like one. He says, even though the Shem Beis Deis, Shem Beis Havchim Mamish, I'm reading from the middle of page 424, and because one is referring to Hu Mekayim Shalem as the God occupies and defines the space of existence, but Ein Ha'elam Mekayim. That's Das Elyon, how God is beyond existence. Yet in Elokus, they're both actually, as he puts it here, it's nitfas ve'eina nitfas ke'echad. God being manifesting in a way that relates to existence, and God being beyond existence, for God is both equal. And we learned the parentheses, the meaning of that, that from the point of view, if you remember earlier, we learned that The whole concept of elevation, magbiya and mashpili, is only shaykh to levels that are not atzmus, where you can't even talk about that. So we're talking about in the divine manifestation, there's a level that both are equal. And the reason for that is beis deis kill deis Havaya should say beis da deis halalu mamish liyesel l'maylam beis hadot, because he's higher than both of them. That's why you can equalize them both. So when we say yesh la'ayin, which is from the yesh amiti to the ayin to the oir, which is bottled to it, and then you have ayin to yesh from the oir elikus that relates to existence to the yesh, he says both of them from a point of view of atzmus are equal. The parsa that separates between these two levels of ayin is only from our perspective. Mafsik klal, but from the Eibush to Eina parsa mafsik klal, the shavet das tachton das elyon, because he's above as he is below equally. And then he concluded, that's why we say Mika Hashem Elokeinu, something unique that we're saying. Who is like this God? This is miyuchad dafka to neshamas Yisrael. They can appreciate and they can relate to this level. Mika Hashem Elokeinu dafka miyuchad neshamas k'moshein b'sharshim ba'asmer sein sof. Like we say ke'ata avinu, that's higher from the whole concept of ishtalshlus. That magbili shaven mamish mitamanal. So the yud of a magbi and the yud of mashpili become like one yud, like the yud of yud ke vavke becomes one with the yud of adnai. The first yud becomes one with the last yud, because exactly as he is above, that's how he is below. So we have two levels. That's from our perspective, and from Asmu's perspective, they become like one. And we elaborated on that in the last classes I gave. Went back to Ayin Beis, because literally the last lines of Ayin Beis literally say this that I just reviewed. And that's where we're up to, the end of the middle paragraph on page 424. And as I said, we'll continue learning this till the end of the mimer. Then we'll go back and, based on this, piece together the puzzle of where Ayin Beis, the context of Ayin Beis, and where Ayin Beis would have most likely headed had the Rebbe Rashab continued writing it based on the mimer of the Mittler Rebbe, where he elaborates on these details and the whole flow. So, unless somebody wants to ask anything after all this, I'm ready to continue. On page 424, the new paragraph at the bottom of the bottom, closer to the bottom of the page.
I have a quick question. It's more technical, but in the order of this, in the Seder of the Seder Histalshus, in the order of the chain of devolution of godliness, the place of the Ayin Hamiti, is that Keser? Is that coincident with Keser? Or is higher than somehow higher than Keser?
Well, before the Tzimtzum, it would be the Eid Ein Sof that's higher than relating to existence. I think once you talk about Keser, he did say he related it to Keser also. I think he said, if I recall correctly, Chochmah, there's Chochmah as it looks at Keser, and then Chochmah is like the ayin coming from Keser, and there it's completely Uchamu, it's darkened bottle. And then there's Chochmah as it looks at Bina and Midas, that's how the ayin goes to the Yesh. So there, yeah, you do have Keser being, well, let me see. I'm looking at the bottom of page 423.
Or Ein Sof Keser?
Yeah. So there, I mean, on lower levels, Keser actually, Chochmah is more like the ayin of the Yesh of Keser, and then there's Chochmah as it becomes the ayin of the Yesh of Bina. So generally speaking, Keser could be seen as both in the microcosm, once you go into, after the Tzimtzum, Keser would be like either the Yesh Amiti or the ayin of the Yesh Amiti. I have to go back and see exactly if you want to find the exact location for it. But he definitely spoke about it.
Okay. The top of 423, it looks like he talks about it.
The bottom of 423 is what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Also
Oh,
the
okay.
top, a little further down, where he talks about uchamhu.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let us read on now. He says like this. Achadayin yesh lahavin. Now, we still need to understand. However, we still need to understand. Loma Omar Hamagbil Sheves Umashpili. Why does the pasuk then say, since you just said that both of them are equal, Magbil Sheves and Mashpili Liris from the point of view of the etzem of Atzmus, why does he say Hamagbil Sheves Umashpili? Acha Shu Atzmi is Baruch Shahu Atzmi is Baruch. What's that? Acha Shahu Atzmi is Baruch. Mebchinas Emek Reim ve'Emek Tachas. Being that who he himself is bebchinas emek reim. Remember, we learned about the depth of above, and emek tachas, the beis adel sanal. I'm not sure how to read it, but he's basically saying, since he himself comes from both levels, so the language is a little rough here. I'm not sure how to read it, but he's basically asking, if you're talking about a level that's beyond all these levels, because there's no Maila Mata altogether, so how do you say Loshen Hakbala Lamaila Vashbala Lamata Klam? Achashu Lamaila Kamay Lamata Mamish Canal. You're saying on that level of Atzmus, what is above is
It's
exactly
simple
the
how to
thing
read
below.
it.
So why is he say it as two phrases, as if it's like two levels? That's what he's asking.
How to
So
read it is simple. אחר שהוא עצמו יסבורך מבחינת עומק רום ועומק תחס, דבייס הדאוס הנ"ל, איך שייך לומר לשון הגבוה למיילו והשפעה למטה כלל.
okay, good. That's right. Since he himself is from both Emek Reim and Emek Tachas, of both deis as one, so why do we say Akbar Lamayla Shpal Ma'achashu Lamayla Kamei Lamata Mamash Kanal? There's really like 2 points to the question. One is, since he's altogether one thing, everything is one there. So why do you say Magbili and Magbi and Mashpili? And in general, how could you say Akbar and Allah? Akbar is Allah and Ashpal Yurida, when Lamayla is Mamash Kamei Lamata. Now, just for the record, in Ayin Beis, he asked a question that is somewhat similar to this question. There he asked why there are two levels of Ayin. Being, if you go to Ayin Beis, I just want to refer, because I think now that I'm reading this, it may very well be that Ayin Beis is basing it on this question. He asks, on the bottom of 1474, I'm looking at Ayin Beis, he says, Ach tzarech lahavin, de lefi zeh hare lo yesh kan beis b'chinas ayin klal, v'akolu b'chinas ayin achas, haynu b'chinas ayin shel yesh amiti, umau inyan ani rishon v'ani achrim. So he doesn't say in the exact language, but it's very, very reminiscent of this, what we're reading here, very similar. Why there are two levels? Since it's all one. So let's see how the Mittler Rebbe answers it, and then we'll compare it to how the Rebbe Rashab answers it. The Omnom, now he continues. The Omnom, let me just point out one more thing. Now, the seeming answer that most of us would say, without even at first glance, would be, the answer is, we're not talking about from the point of view of Atzmus. From the point of view of Atzmus, Taka 1. We're talking about from our point of view. From our point of view, there's two levels. And then when you climb higher and you go higher and higher, you come to appreciate, but both levels are really one in Atzmus. That would be the seemingly ostensible answer to the question. But the fact is that he is asking it tells us that also from the point of view of Atzmus, seems to be there is a need, or a want at least. God wants to have two levels. That's what he said in Ayin Beis. We'll talk about that more as we learn further. I just wanted to make that point because it seems to be the obvious answer. But here he goes further. He's seeming to want to bring in that from Atzmus' point of view, there's also two. So let's see how he explains it. So he says like this: "V'omnom, however, hine mavur lamayla." We now explained earlier, The Pirush Havaya Elokeinu shebekrishma. Remember, he's comparing mi Hashem Elokeinu to Shema, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, also Hashem Elokeinu. He's comparing the two. He did that already earlier when he began the whole topic. He said the two levels, Havaya Elokeinu, Beis Yechudim, he compared to Mika Hashem Elokeinu. So he says like this now. We learned earlier in explaining Havaya Elokeinu in Krishma, when we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, she'ein zeh mitam de neshamas Yisrael all b'machshava levad. That this is not for the reason that neshamas arose in God's thought initially. In other words, we're not talking about Shema Yisrael, how neshamas are in their root, all the way which precedes everything else. Say Yisrael all b'machshava tchila, that the neshamas Yisrael are rooted in the highest levels, higher than Torah, higher than everything. We learned earlier that that is not what he's emphasizing in Shema. In Shema, he wants to talk about neshamas as they come down below. I have to find where it is earlier in the Maimer, but it's very relevant to our whole discussion, because if you recall, when we spoke about are neshamas higher than Torah, or is Torah higher than neshamas? So the answer was neshamas in their root, they're higher than Torah, but when they come down below, they need Torah. They need Torah, the light, to illuminate, because without that, we live in a dark world. We need light. Everything we learned about light, that the eye, the physical eye, needs light to see in a dark space. So the Kiddush here is not how neshamas are l'mayla. Like he said before, Mikasha miyuchid l'neshamas Yisrael, that they can access Atzmus. Fine, that's how it is above. But how about when neshamas come down below? So he said, when we said Hashem Elokeinu, the tam was not legabe how it is olav machshava l'mayla levad. Elamatam the neshamas Yisrael begufim dafke. We're talking from the perspective, metam meaning here, that's not for the reason that even neshamas Yisrael, they come down into bodies. Dafke. Mekaimim Torah mitzvahs, where they fulfill Torah mitzvahs below. Bepel mamish, in action and actuality, basically concretely in this world. B'mesiras nefesh, with total sacrifice. Ba'ava v'yira, with ava v'yira, love and reverence. Afila b'yetzer hara. Remember, the whole point was that Shema Yisrael should impact the nefesh habamis b'chol avavcha b'shnei yitzarecha v'haftas Hashem Elokecha, also with the yetzer hara, also b'chol avavcha b'shnei yitzarecha. So we see clearly we're not talking about how neshamas are in all the way in the highest levels. We're talking about as they come down below. That's where they experience Hashem Elokeinu. That's the whole chiddush here. If you go back to the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, the whole point was, when the question he asked was, how could an animal soul that is on its own self-driven by self-interest and by its own needs, how could it come to ever love God? It's a yesh. How could it become bottle? And the answer is because the divine soul can train and educate and harness the animal soul to become the oil that fuels the elokus, that the fuels avos Hashem. We also learned that the nefesh habamis is also rooted in the levels of toyu and high levels of elokus, except it's concealed. So it could be done. So we're not told. So the chiddush here is not how it is l'mayla. It's how it comes down lamata, and neshama comes down into a body and to an animal soul, and it has to struggle, and has to fight with the animal soul, and has to train it, and has to transform it. That's what we're talking about here. So we're not talking about how it is in its root. To transform darkness to light. That's the chiddush here. Canal, as we learned earlier. The zedafka ola b'machshava. That's what arose in God's thought. Didn't just arise in his thought that should be a neshama. His thought was that there should be, if you remember, ola b'machshava tchila, seif ma'aseh b'machshava tchila, that he arose up there that not just there should be neshamas, but those neshamas should come down below and make a dira b'tachtenim. Nesava kosh baruch hu liyisleis baruch dira b'tachtenim. That's all the machshava. V'nesava, and that's what he desired up there. So it's not just about neshama, a very high spiritual state of consciousness, but it's about bringing it down and actualizing it in this world. We learned also the pasuk and the Gemara that if you don't accept the covenant, the whole world ceases to be, because the whole world is based on that this world should be transformed through Torah mitzvah, through a neshama. The Noz Tchilosim B'Seifon, the beginning is wedged in the end. Dafke, bebirurim the shem havaya b'teira mitzvus. The birurim, the refinements that are caused by shem havaya through the Torah mitzvahs, and the Torah mitzvahs that we fulfill and we perform in this world. Umitam zeh, and that's the main. From this reason, nikra Havaya Elokeinu. So Havaya Elokeinu is not because Atzmus combines both levels. That's a given, but that even as it comes down below, the mitam zeh nikra Havaya Elokeinu mamish bli shim shini hamachus klal. Without any shinri, that Elokus, as it is in the highest levels, comes down below without any shift. If you remember, we talked about Torah, we talked about how it comes down without any, it's immutable, does not change. Shalamayla mishtalshlus, the emek reim ve'emek tachas, the das elyon ve'das tachten, that does not change at all. Because from the it's higher than the shtalshlus of the higher depth. And the lower depth, and das tachten, das an ella, k'moishu mamish lamaila. Next page, page 425. Exactly as he is mamish lamaila, melubish lamata b'shem havaya de mitzvus or b'tshuva. Bli helam ulavush klal. Exactly as it is above, it manifests down below in shem havaya of mitzvus and tshuva. We without any concealment or garment at all. So that's what we're talking about here. That's coming down in this down below, that have exactly below as it is above. So not just that, from Atzma's point of view, it's a given that everything is one. But can we experience that oneness down below? Like we said, you could argue that maybe we can only experience Elokus as it relates to existence. The ayin of the Yesh HaNivra. Who says we can experience the ayin of the Yesh HaMiti and the Yesh HaMiti itself? That's the chiddush here, that we come down. That's what God wanted. That the Eibishter in his highest levels wanted it to come down into existence, and in existence we should experience Atzmus exactly as he is, completely beyond existence. What do you? I'll stop. You want to ask something? What was your question?
No, before he said Shelamaylo meishtalshelus te'emekum ve'emek tachas, that's something. This is not ishtalshelus. It's much higher than ishtalshelus. Why is using the word ishtalshelus?
He says Shelamaylo meishtalshelus.
Shelamaylo me'emekum. Emekum, we're talking about ayin, much higher.
I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm saying he's saying that he's speaking before he spoke. If you looked earlier, he spoke about there's l'mayla mishtalshlus, there's inishtalshlus, and here we're talking about you having both of them coming as one.
So these two dargas, Oimekum is part of ishtalshelus.
Well, Emek Reim and Emek Tachas can be part of Ishtalshelus. It also could be is Lamaila from Emek Reim and Emek Tachas, where he joins them together. So these are initially they are called two levels, Emek Reim and Emek Tachas. Yeah, Emek Tachas is how it is below. Emek Reim is how it is above. Like Das Tachten and Das Elyon. Are they two levels or one level? So they're two levels. Ones they manifest as they manifest, but the Kael Deus Havaya, they become one. I think that's he's just repeating what he said earlier.
I have a question if you're done answering Rabbi Teitl's question, but I can wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is very reminiscent of a large portion, portions plural of Ayin Beis. The Shiluv of Shem Havaya and Shem Elokeinu. Is this the same notion, or is this something more nuanced? I guess I'll just leave it at that.
I don't remember. I would stay away from that comparison unless you find it explicit, because everything has, the Yichud is all over in Ishtalshelus. There's Shiluv Havaya and Adnai. You have Shiluv here Havaya and Elokeinu. So I would not yet bring those two together at this point.
So like for example, Vayidaita Helmash Vasalav Ki Hashem
Hu Elokeinu.
like Elokeinu, Bashamayim Ras Mitach. So I would say no. That's what I mean. That we learn that the Shiluv of Shem Havaya and Shem Elokeinu, it's the same God, both above and below, and we're supposed to realize that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get back to V'yadaita, because that was also brought. That was brought in Ayin Beis, and of course in Mittler Rebbe as well. So we'll get back to that. I would not jump yet because right now he's speaking about Shema Yisrael, and but I believe that will be connected. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you just technical question? What does the Baha'avir stand for?
Where's Baha'avir? Where? Ava V'yira. Ava V'yira.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So on top of page 425, Mamish Lamata, Malubish Lamata. As it will be in the future. That the yesh, in the yesh of the nivra, the yesh of creation, will directly access the yesh amiti, the dilug beis deis hanal, leaping over these two perspectives of das arin and das tachten canal, the erech, as discussed earlier at length. So, in other words, the way existence is put into place, there's a whole order. There's obviously atzmus, oir, all the levels. Then you come the levels of air before the tzimtzum, the air, the air that shaykh la'elamis, oliber tzene. Then you have shir atzmei b'koyach, where God allocates the resources. Then comes malchus of Ein Sof, the tzimtzum, the kav, and the whole seder shtalshus as we know it, with higher levels and lower levels. So in general, there's higher levels, there's lower levels in the macrocosm and in the microcosm. That's the way everything was put into place by creation. Then comes our avodah. When we come and we daven and we say all the tefillos and we come to Shema Yisrael and then V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha and everything he discussed in detail, and including all our avodah, what are we accomplishing? If we leave everything the way it was by creation, then we didn't accomplish anything. We're accomplishing something, not just that we're revealing godliness, even in the world where godliness is concealed, but we're revealing the highest levels of Elokus, the levels that go beyond Milo Mata altogether. Now, obviously, as I've said many times, this is a gradual process that you can't just leap all the way to the highest levels. You have to first go step by step. But ultimately, what he's saying, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, is coming to say that the God, the transcendent, is one with the immanent, like Sevav V'Mal, and then even higher, Emek Remen, Emek Tachas, Das and Das Tachten, all the way to the highest of levels where God is beyond, where Atzmus, Kel Deis Havaya is beyond, to the point that when we finish that process and Mashiach comes, Ne'elam Haba, what will happen? That all these levels that we needed as stepping stones, like rungs of a ladder, we will now have the direct connection straight to the source. You'll still have a Seder Shtalshus, but you will not need it to help you grow because you already gone through those levels and you've reached the Yesha and Miti, and that's what he means, the Dilug Beis Deis. He's not saying they'll be eliminated, but we'll have that access because we went through all this. Like when you learn Aleph Beis with your teacher, there's no choice but you have to go through Aleph Beis, Gimel, Dalet. Then you learn Ben Chamesh LeMikra and Eser LeMishnah. That's the process. But then there comes a point where you begin ad aboin shnin kay inisha daita derabe. You come to understand daita derabe when you reach 40, either 40 years from learning or 40 years of age. But point being is, why didn't you get there right away? Because you can't get to the yesh amiti like that. You first have to refine yourself and expand your horizons, you expand your consciousness, expand your kelim, your mind, your heart, your whole avodah, mutfa murgish muskel in the language we used a lot earlier in Ayin Beis. You need to climb. That's called avodah. the Aveda that we've been doing for thousands of years. But ultimately, you are going to reach a place that's beyond having a relationship just with the Aleph Beis of your teacher, or in this case, just with Elokus as it relates to existence. You're going to have a relationship with the Yesh Hamiti, B'diluk Beis Deis Hanal, as explained earlier at length. So in other words, what he's coming to say here, but he didn't answer the question yet about Hamashpili and Hamagbi and Mashpili, but we're getting there. He's saying that the point is Hashem Elokeinu here, the goal is to achieve it in the levels of Ishtalshlus where we exist. That's the kavanah. Even the highest level of where Atzmus wants this total union of Yechudi Lo Yechudi Atoi. He doesn't want it Lamaila. That Atzmus has it, he doesn't need us for that. That's not an accomplishment. That Atzmus is beyond everything and beyond being beyond, and that it includes it all. The Chiddush is that Atzmus is giving us the power to draw down that highest level of divine awareness that is beyond everything, but that, of course, comes after many, many stages and steps of our Avodah. Like I've said a number of times, when we say the pasuk that Lo Yalamda Oid Ishas Re'ehu in Lasid Lave, a person will not teach his friend. Ki Kulam Yedu Esi, all of Kulam, they will know me, Atzmus. L'miktana v'agdelam, the pasuk concludes, from young to old, or from cotton, from small to old to great, from young to old. So the question is, if Kulam Yedu Esi, why is miktana v'agdelam? Because each of us will still be who we are, but we'll have that ability to access the source itself. Today, we need teachers for that. We need a teacher, we need to be taught step by step, as I just described. So he's describing what it will be like when you finally reach that ultimate place. And then there'll also be growth, as we've discussed a number of times. Right now, he's not mentioning that. He's just talking about it in context, why he's talking about Hamagbi and Mashpili is all one within Atzmus. But he's going to continue to elaborate on this. A lot of the ideas that we've learning here, we've already learned. So you'll see there are many things that will not surprise you because the lines were used. But as we see in the Mittler Rebbe style, is he keeps coming back to a certain central theme and it may sound redundant. I don't find it redundant because each time it adds another nuance. And now we've come to a deeper understanding of it all. And he's bringing it all together in this pasuk, Hamagbi and Hamashpili. But nevertheless, the ideas, some of the basic ones were said earlier. So he continued. Let me stop if anybody wants to ask anything. Okay. Ukadugma zu. And similarly, as a dugma, similar as an example to this, taste of this, was the divine revelation of Ein Sof in the chamber of the Holy of Holies. Remember, we learned Mokem Arnein Min Amida, if you recall. Nitfas ve'ena nitfas, that he's contained but not contained. Is he defined by the space or is he not defined by the space? So it's nitfas. He defines the space, but he is not defined by it. The Mokem Arnein Min Amida, because the space of the Arden of the ark did not have measure. Mokim, on one hand, there's a Mokim Arden, but then you say the Mokim itself was L'mayla Mokim. Ba'afal pi, sheshemei hashamayim, sheshamayim v'shmei hashamayim lo yichal kaluha. Like Shlomo HaMelech said to Hashem, that the heavens and the heavens of heavens cannot contain him. But here, Afki Abayis Hazeh, in this home, in this house, he was contained. But contained and not contained at once. The nitfas and not nitfas. So, which of course to us sounds like a paradox. Either you're there or you're not there. Can you say I'm here and I'm not here? I'm present and I'm not present? But when we learn all this, you understand when it says that God is not contained, it doesn't mean he's not there. It means he's not defined by it. He's not limited by it. So the same Atzmus that's completely beyond everything, he chooses to also be contained by it to some extent. And then you have a building, a Mishkan, and a Beis HaMikdash, and a Kodesh Kodashim, and a Mokim Arden. But the Mokim Arden is Ein Min Amida. And now he comes back to answer and explain the pasuk. B'kach yuvan gam kan, ba'omrei mika Hashem Elokeinu dafka. And so too we'll understand here, in our case, in what we're discussing, when he says, Mika Hashem Elokeinu, who is like this Hashem Elokeinu? Shaydei slapshus ha'atzmis the Ein Sof b'teira mitzvahs. through the manifestation of the very core of Ein Sof, I should say, in Torah mitzvahs, ba'ava v'yira, and ava v'yira, lamata. Like we said, we're not talking about lamata. We're talking about how it comes down lamata. Kamoy lamailo ba'atzmei mamish. That is exactly as it is above, as it is in the core, ba'atzmei mamish. Nikra Havaya Elokeinu dafke kanal. That's what he's called Havaya Elokeinu. So we say, Mika Hashem, who is like this Hashem Elokeinu? We're not talking about Atzmus that has everything in it and equalizes everything. That even as it comes down below, Torah mitzvahs down below, it's Mika Hashem Elokeinu. The Hashem Elokeinu are like one, dafke kanal. Ve'im kol zeh. And nevertheless, we'll soon see what he means by im kol zeh. Hamagbil l'sheves u'mashpili. I don't know if he means v'im kol zeh as a nevertheless. You could say v'im kol zeh. You could say with, and with all of this, hamagbil l'sheves u'mashpili. I need to.
Is he saying
No, not with
is he
all of
saying
this.
notwithstanding this?
Became.
Well, im kol zeh usually is like afal pikain,
Im
like
kol zeh.
notwithstanding or nevertheless. It's
Yeah.
usually what it means.
And here also.
Are you sure?
Here also, he's saying
So what's the,
other
so what's the, so how do you
lapses
explain
is
the
so
flow?
high from, and
So I
read
even
it
though there is also
Okay, so one
Makbihi
second.
or Mashpili. He's going to explain it.
Okay, that's why I would also. That's why I interpret it as such. But I was thinking maybe he may mean something else. But I agree that he's saying that though that it's one, you still have the concept of Makbil Shevis. In other words, we're not eliminating and annihilating the structure of existence. The fact that we've connected now to a place that unites them both, like he said, Ke'echad, Havaya Elokeinu, that is Lamata Kamei Lamaila, does not eliminate the Das Eri and Das Tachten. That's what I think he's saying here. Achagbol of Ashpa Zu, however, this Agbah,
So this Darke is above
this
Ayin.
elevation, one second, and Ashpola, and this Yerida, this descent, Hakolu be'inyan Torah mitzvahs ve'avaviyira b'birur derapach. It's all in the context of Torah mitzvahs and love and reverence in the birur of Rapach, the 288 sparks that are down below. Shaidei chochma de Torah dafke, the dafke through the wisdom of Torah, like we learned earlier. As Torah comes down below, all the way to Torah, if you remember Torah Shebal Peh, that comes to separate and clarify what is right and what is wrong. But Chochma is bariru. With Chochma you refine, with Chochma you clarify. V'hu b'chinas yud magbi v'gam yud mashpili, and that's the yud of magbi, like we learned earlier, and the yud of mashpili, shezeu chezer ve'er yosha b'chlal. That refers to chezer er yosha b'chlal. Okay, I think we're going to have to stop here because now it looks like to me he's going over to a another aspect of Magbi. Magbi till now was elevating, it's actually consistent. Elevating, that's Er Chezer, and Mashpili is Er Yashar, drawing it down. So we see here that the bottom line is, that's where I was wondering about the Im Kol Zeh. He said, Havaya Elokeinu dafke, Lamato Kamoy Lamaila, and yet there's still a distinction between Magbi and Mashpili, these two states of Aveda, one is elevating and one is drawing down. The B'chinas Yud Chachma de Magbi Zeh Eila B'chinas Er Chasa, Er Chezer, that the Yud of Chachma is Magbi elevates from the Er Chezer, from the refractive light of Torah mitzvahs, the Yisrael Lamata, the Torah mitzvahs that Yidden do below, la'achar abirur, the chochma b'shem ma, shemevara labanda negadavke, that the mitzvahs we do is after the birur of shema that refines the ban of nega, of klippas nega, ban gemachi behema, k'fmei mitzvahs maisir, she'esim b'dvarim gashmim davke, like in the actionable mitzvahs that we do davke with physical items. So we're doing a birur of ban, the nos chalasim b'seifan, the safe mile all machshava be'er chezer be'ilui acher ilui adre mamilas, because the beginning is wedged in the end, and the end action, the mitzvah down below, arises all the way, all the way goes back up to the very source beginning where the initial intent of Atzmus was. So it's going all the way into stima de chol stima, the concealments of all concealments, where no thought can grasp it. That's what the Aveda below does. But I think I'm going to stop here because I see here this is now going back into themes that we learned earlier and from the Maimer and the Alter Rebbe's Maimer. So I don't want to overwhelm myself and everybody here. But bottom line is, we did go over now back to Amagbi and Mashpili, but I believe he answered the question that why it says Amagbi and Mashpili, even though it's one, because the point is to bring it down into this world where there is higher and lower. And there are things you elevate, there are things that you draw down. He didn't finish the whole topic of Magbi and Mashpili as an Erchezer and Yesha yet, but he's entering into that zone. So I think the main thing to keep in mind here is that he's explained that the goal of Meik Hashem Elokeinu is drawing it down Hashem Elokeinu here, not the way it is in its source, but it comes down all the way down here. That's the kavanah of Hashem Elokeinu, where should be no shinoi mamish, that below should be exactly like above. And yet there's a Magbi Mashpili, which we're in the middle of learning of. So I don't know yet how this is going to end the story here, but we began discussing it, and we'll learn more as we continue the learning.
Because the bottom line is that nisave basachtoinim, that's the bottom line. That's why you have the Magbi and Mashpili. What did he say before? The Olam Haba will be yesh mi yesh amiti atzmai b'dilug beis deis hanal. So it's going to be, so what he's explaining here, lamaylo moemik rum, that means not from the ayin, from the yesh amiti atzmai.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah, that's why I gave the example, kulim yedu esi. That once you go through all the levels of Aveda step by step through Ishtalshalus, you come to a point where you can connect to the Yesh Amiti and essentially leap over the two levels of Ayin. But remember, that came after you worked with the Ayin. You didn't just get there on your own.
That's the Yesh Amiti.
Yeah, but I'm saying it came after we worked with the Yichud Tata, then Yichud Ilah, then you come to a place that's higher than Yichud Tata and Yichud Ilah.
I have a question.
Ayin Beis explains this very well, and we learned it at length. That's where we go back to the end of Ayin Beis, where he talks about this in detail, about the Yichud of both Yichudim, how Elokus and Welt become one mamish. But that's only after you go through Yichud Tata and Yichud Ilah before you can get to that place.
I had a question about
Lemailo me'ayin or amiti, right? That's what you said.
Yeah, that's the Yesh Amiti, yes.
Are you done, Rabbi Taito? Or I don't want to interrupt again.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I had a question about this this phrase he used, "B'chochma isbariru," I guess is what it says.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand what it means, that through the Chachma of Torah, we'll have a bearer of matters below, of the he said 248 sparks of Klippa, I guess, or that will be redeemed. But just this phrase itself, he's saying dafke b'chachmas b'sbariru, and I just checked it on Sefaria. It seems to be a phrase only used in Chassidus, but he's citing it as if it's like nigla almost. I mean, is the student, someone in our situation, supposed to understand this phrase based on general knowledge and learning of Chassidus, or he's making this point dafki here, and we're supposed to figure out what it means? In other words, is this a concept known in Chassidus, or is this just he happens to have used these words to make reference to this idea I just mentioned?
The former. It's a very big concept in Chassidus that's very well known. In Tanya, he brings it. He brought it earlier in this Maimer. The Rebbe Rashab elaborated upon it in Ayin Beis as well. So Chochmas Bereishis is not the first time it's mentioned. In this Maimer itself is mentioned a few times.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is a very central theme of Chassidus in general. It comes from Zohar, and it's a central theme, period. but especially in this Maimorim, is because Chachma, the Chachma of Torah is the power to birur. The birur of Isser and Heter, and Tumah and Tara, and Mutter and Kosher and Posel and so on, and Mutter and Osir is all what Chachma Torah does. I elaborated on this in earlier classes. In volume 2, there's a whole, a good few pages where he discusses that length. What means Bechachma is Beriru. And I referred to it when we learned it here as well. That Chachma does achieves the Birur, especially in the context of Torah and Torah Shabbal Peh. So probably if you look it up by search, you'll probably find the term used earlier in this mimer, and especially in Ayin Beis.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Rabbi Jacobson, I know obviously this is a personal journey for everyone to reach these levels, but what I want to know is throughout Tanakh, is there anyone that would we be able to study his or her life to say that, okay, they started from this aspect and this aspect, and then finally they reached that?
You mean reached Yesh Amiti, you mean, or reached higher levels?
Correct. Yesh Hamiti.
Everything is.
I'm saying throughout Tanakh, do we know of any particular individual say, you know what, this person started off with the lower level, then this and this, and we could see by end of his or her life, they reached that level.
Well, I don't know about Yesh
There are very
Amiti
great
part.
people in Tanakh. Moshe Rabbeinu, Shmuel Hanovi, Shaya Hanovi,
Eliyahu Navi.
powerful, Eliyahu Hanovi, powerful people. Very powerful people.
That's exactly what I would say, is that you have many examples of this. Avram Avinu, start with Avram Avinu, Lech Lecha. He was 75 years old, and his journey, the journey of every human being on earth, from Adam until today, from the Gan Eden until today, essentially is the story. The ultimate reaching the highest is when Mashiach comes. That's why everybody wants Mashiach. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, it says that he reached the 49 gates of understanding. Memtes Shari Bina. He didn't reach the Shar Hanun, the 50th gate, until he passed away, where it says Nahar Nevoy, and the Maggid of Mezrich teaches Nevoy is Nun Boy. The mountain Nevoy is Nun Boy. The letters Nun Boy, the 50th in it. So he reached the 50th, elusive 50th, when he passed away. You have Eliyahu Novi says that he was the only one that his body went up with his neshama. Everybody else's body gets buried on earth. So there's a bit of. Now, none of them.
Not the only one. There were 9 people.
Yeah, but bottom
was
line
not the
is
only
that,
one.
but he's the classic example that you bring for that. So everybody demonstrates growth through the years of their avodah. Every tzaddik, every human being, and frankly, all of us as well, on a smaller level. Every day you say Shema, it shouldn't be like yesterday's Shema. It should be a new level of Ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, a new level of Hashem Elokeinu, and so on. Now, the ultimate Olam Haba is when the job will be finished, and then all that was done will be revealed in the ultimate experience of Yesh Amiti, Yesh Hanivra. So you have to know whether you're talking about a microcosm, you're talking about subtly, you're talking about a taste of it. You have Tzadikim hitimon me'ein Olam Haba. Tzadikim and Timid Chachamim have a taste of Olam Haba today. So you have by Tzadikim, you have a taste of Olam Haba, you have a taste of the future of Mashiach's times, and that's a taste of this as well. So the ultimate, Ilahanchil Oyev Yesh is an expression. We say that all the tzaddikim will inherit Shai Elamis. So it says Yesh, twice Yesh. Yoshish, it says Shai, Yesh is the Yesh Anivra will become one with the Yesh Amiti. So the ultimate is when Mashiach comes, but a preamble, if you wish, or an appetizer or a taste of it, and everybody relative to them, of course. That's the answer briefly.
Thank you.
Like he says in Tanya in chapter 36, he says that Kfar Hoya Me'enze b'matan Teira. Kfar Hoya Le'elam Me'enze b'matan Teira. By matan Teira was Me'en, similar to what will be La'osid Lave when we'll be Nigla Kved Hashem and Ayin Ba'ayin Yiro, where we will see eye to eye with God directly. So there's a taste of Matan Torah. Here he speaks about the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. There you have a taste of it in Aron Einim Min Amidas. So there is a taste of it, or a similarity to it, a microcosm of it. Okay? So even though we move further with Hagbon Allah, I will go back to Magbi and Mashpili because I see he's bringing us back into that whole topic of Erchezer Ner Yosher. So we'll talk about that as well. So, are there any other questions?
Just to maybe not connected regarding the Shar Nun, is that why David HaMelech skips it in Ashrei, the Nun?
It may say that in Sfarim. I don't remember right now. Whether the Shar Nun, because the Shar Nun is not accessible directly, maybe. I'd have to look it up. It's possible.
Is there another reason? I remember there was a reason, I just don't remember what it was.
The reason I recall is because the Nun also...
I don't think so. I think that the reason is the Pshat.
Because Nun is
the Nun,
Yered Min Ashura, right? Because it's like Klippa.
No, there is a pasuk, Noflo lo isoisiv kum b'sulas Yisrael, that there's no hope. It fell down. It's talking about the enemies of the Jewish people, because obviously we don't mean the enemies. So he didn't want to put such a letter in the Ashrei because something negative. That's one of the Perushim. Noflo.
Okay.
Thank you.
There is Reb Simon in the Rebbe's Maimer in Tafshin Yedalef, page Chovdale. The Rebbe is talking about what will happen. Lasid Lobo is talking about das. Said Kulom Yedu Oise LeMiktano Va'ad B'Doilom. The Af Shehu Koton v'Gam LeOsid Yeh Koton. Mikol Mokoim Yeh Etzlo Inyan Hadas SheHa'Oyer VeHaGilu Yeh B'Chulom B'Shover.
Where are you reading? Where'd you read from now?
This is the Maimer in Tafshin Yedalef, the Rebbe's Maimer Ve'ela Mishpotim. It's on page Chovdaled. The last parak of this Maimer, parak Zion.
Mishpotim Yud Aleph? You said Mishpotim Yud Aleph?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to what it says in other places. It's what I was saying before, more or less. Yeah. Okay, very good.
He's saying the ha'oyer ve'hagilu yiyeh bekulon b'shavet. Even though that le'osidi will also be a cotton, mikol mokom yiyeh etzlo inyan hadas u'ba'efen kamayim le'yom mechasim she'oyer ve'hagilu yiyeh bekulon b'shavet.
Well,
Yeah.
if Atmos is revealed, then everybody's going to see it from the old man to the little child. I mean, that's what it's saying. Perhaps each
Not
one will
old man and
comprehend
little
it.
child. We're talking about levels, cotton levels, not in age.
Well, why does it not mean what it literally says? Rabbi Jacobson?
I think, well, Cotton Begadol can mean both age. It could also mean in level of growth.
Of knowledge?
You know,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I don't think it's a contradiction. It could include, I mean, it's basically referring to every, sometimes it says, Ein Cotton Ela Badas, Ein Godla Ela Badas. You could talk, it could be a cotton, like the Rebbe says in some Farbrengens. A person could be a Godel as an age, chronologically, he could be 90 years old, but still be a cotton in Das. And vice versa. So I think the Pasuk, I mean, according to Chassidus, is definitely talking about also Mektanav Agdelim, levels of people's Yediyah, in addition to actual age. But age is fine as well. I mean, there will be children, so to speak, so.
Understood. Well, we should all merit to see those days immediately. Please, God.
Yeah. Okay, let's stop here. Middle of page 425. Let me just